Powers of the President. General, executive, and administrative powers. Executive power. This refers to the President's power to enforce, implement, and administer laws. The President shall ensure that the laws be faithfully executed. Section 17, Article 7. The President's power to conduct investigations to aid him in ensuring the faithful execution of laws is inherent in the President's power as the Chief Executive. The purpose of allowing ad hoc investigative bodies to exist is to allow an inquiry into matters which the President is entitled to know so that he can be properly advised and guided in the performance of his duties relative to the execution and enforcement of the laws of the land. From the case Beraugo versus Philippine Truth Commission, 2010. Summary of presidential powers. 1. Executive power. This is the power to enforce and administer laws. 2. Power of appointment. The legislative can create office, but only the executive can fill it. Congress cannot circumvent this by setting very narrow standards or qualifications such that only one person is qualified to hold office. From the case Flores versus De Relon, 1993. 3. Power of control. The President may nullify, modify judgments of subordinates. From Section 17, Article 7, he may undo or redo actions of subordinates and lay down rules for the performance of subordinates' duties. 4. Power of supervision. This refers to the oversight function. The executive must see to it that rules which it did not make are followed. 5. Commander-in-Chief powers. Under Section 18, Article 7. Under Commander-in-Chief powers are 1. Call-out power for armed forces to suppress lawless violence. 2. Suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus, where only in times of rebellion and invasion, and when required by public safety. 3. Martial law does not suspend the Constitution. The 6th power of the President is the power to legislate. Power of legislation. 1. Veto power. 2. Power to declare emergency. Declare only. The exercise of emergency powers is vested in Congress, but may be delegated by it to the President. And 3rd, integrative power, which refers to the powers shared by the legislative. Example, appointments requiring confirmation and rulemaking. Legislation during times of emergency. 7th power, diplomatic powers, including the power to enter into treaties. 8th, residual power, the power to protect the general welfare of people, founded on duty of the President as steward of the people, includes powers unrelated to execution of any provision of law. From the case Marcos versus Manglapos, 1989. Other powers of the President. 1. Power to pardon, which includes reprieve, to commute, pardon, limit fines, and forfeitures after final judgment. Under Section 19, Subsection 1, Article 7. 2nd, other power, power to grant amnesty, with concurrence of majority of all members of Congress. 3rd, borrowing power, to contract or guarantee foreign loans with concurrence of monetary board. Section 20, Article 7. And lastly, budgetary power, to submit to Congress budget of bills and expenditures under Section 22, Article 7. Other summary of presidential powers. 10 is informing power, to address Congress during opening sessions or at any other time. Under Section 23, Article 7. Note that the presidential power of control over the executive branch of government is a self-executing provision of the Constitution and does not require statutory implementation, nor may its exercise be limited, much less withdrawn by the legislature. From the case Ocampo versus Enriquez, 2016. Power of appointment of the President. In general, the power of appointment is stipulated in Section 16, Article 7 of the Constitution, which states that the President shall nominate and, with the consent of the Commission on Appointments, appoint the heads of the executive departments, ambassadors, and other public ministers and consuls, or officers of the armed forces from the rank of colonel or naval captain, and other officers whose appointments are vested in him in this Constitution. He shall also appoint all other officers of the government whose appointments are not otherwise provided by law, and those whom he may be authorized by law to appoint. The Congress may, by law, vest the appointment of other officers lower in rank in the President alone, in the courts, or in the heads of departments, agencies, commissions, or boards. Power of appointment. Appointment is selection by the proper authority of an individual who is to exercise the power and functions of a given office. Appointee has a right to claim compensation as stated in the appointment. Designation. What is the difference? Designation refers to the imposition of additional duties, usually by law, upon a person already in public service by virtue of an earlier appointment. It does not entail payment of additional benefits or grants upon the person so designated, from the case of National Amnesty Commission versus COA 2004. What is commission? Commission refers to the written evidence of the appointment. What are the elements of valid appointment? 1. Authority to appoint and evidence of the exercise of authority. 2. Transmittal of the appointment paper and evidence of the transmittal, preferably through the Malacanang records of office. 3. Vacant position at the time of the appointment. And 4. Receipt of the appointment papers and acceptance of the appointment by the appointee, who possesses all qualifications and none of the disqualifications. From the case Velicaria Garafil versus Office of the President 2015. 4 groups of officers whom the President may appoint. First group. First group needs the consent of the Commission on Appointments, and these are 1. Heads of executive departments. 2. Ambassadors and other public ministers and consuls. 3. Officers of the armed forces from the rank of colonel or naval captain. And 4. Other officers whose appointments are vested in him by the Constitution. Example: regular members of the Judicial Bar Council. Ex-officio members do not need the confirmation of the CA. Another is chairman and commissioners of the Civil Service Commission, COMELEC, and COA. And lastly, members of the regional and consultative commissions. Second group. All other officers of the government whose appointments are not otherwise provided by law. Third group. Those whom the President may be authorized by law to appoint, and the chairman and members of the Commission of Human Rights. From the case Bautista versus Alonga, 1989. 4. Officers lower in rank whose appointments Congress may by law vest in the President alone. From the case Sarmiento III versus Mison, 1987. Consent of the Commission on Appointments is not required for second, third, and fourth group, as these are not positions whose appointments are granted by the Constitution. Note: appointments to the Philippine Coast Guard, which is no longer under AFP, need not undergo confirmation. From the case Soriano versus Lista, 2003. The Philippine National Police, PNP, Section 4 of Article 16 of the Philippine Constitution, is separate and distinct from the armed forces of the Philippines. The police force is different from and independent of the armed forces, and that ranks in the military are not similar to those in the PNP. Thus, directors and chief superintendents of the Philippine National Office do not fall under the first category of the presidential appointees requiring confirmation by the COA, or the Commission on Appointments. From the case Manalo versus Ristosa, 1999. Note that the Congress may by law vest in the appointment of other officers lower in rank in the President alone. The inclusion of the word alone was an oversight. The Constitution should read, the Congress may by law vest the appointment of other officers lower in rank in the President, from the case Sarmiento versus Mison. Other cases where confirmation is not required. 1. When Congress creates inferior offices but omits to provide for appointment thereto, or provides for an unconstitutional manner for such appointments. 2. Appointment of the Vice President as member of the Cabinet under Section 3, Article 7. 3. Appointments upon recommendation of the Judicial Bar Council. And 4. Appointments solely made by the President. Appointments upon recommendation of the Judicial and Bar Council does not require confirmation by the Commission on Appointments. Example: members of the Supreme Court and all other courts, from Section 9, Article 8. Note that the appointment must be made 90 days from when the vacancy occurs. From Section 4, Subsection 1, Article 8. For lower courts, appointments shall be issued within 90 days from submission of the list. Another example, Ombudsman and his 5 deputies for Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and General Military, from Section 9, Article 9. Article 11. Clustering. In Aguinaldo versus Aquino, 2017, the court ruled that the clustering impinged upon the President's appointment in appointing the associate justices in the Sandigan Bayan. The President's option for every vacancy was limited to the 5 to 7 nominees in each cluster. Once the President chose an appointee from one cluster, he was prescribed from considering the other nominees in the same cluster for other vacancies. All the nominees applied for and were qualified for appointment to any of the vacant associate justice position of the Sandigan Bayan. However, the JBC did not explain why one nominee should be considered for appointment to the position assigned to one specific cluster only. The nominee's chance for appointment was restricted to the consideration of one cluster in which they were included, even though they applied for and were qualified for all vacancies. Clustering is valid only when 1. There are multiple vacancies, 2. Vacancies refer to the same position, and 3. Vacancies occur at the same time. What are the steps in appointing process? 1. Nomination by the President. 2. Confirmation by the Commission on Appointments. 3. Issuance of the Commission. And 4. Acceptance by the appointee. Note that in the case of ad interim appointments, steps 1, 3, and 4 precede step 2. Kaya wala na may confirmation. Kaya ad interim. An appointment is deemed complete only upon acceptance, from the case of Lacson versus Romero, 1949. Appointment is essentially a discretionary power, the only condition being that the appointee, if issued a permanent appointment, should possess the minimum qualification required, or the minimum qualification requirements under the civil service eligibility prescribed by law for the position. Discretion also includes the determination of the nature or character of the appointment. What are the types of appointment? Regular and recess or ad interim appointments. 2 kinds of appointments requiring confirmation. Regular and ad interim. Regular is if the Congress is in session. Ad interim or recess appointment is during the recess of Congress, because the Commission on Appointments shall meet only while Congress is in session, from Section 19, Article 6. A regular appointment is 1. Made by the President while the Congress is in session, and 2. Takes effects only after confirmation by the Commission on Appointments, and lastly, once approved, continues until the end of the term. Note: the mere filing of a motion for reconsideration of the confirmation of an appointment cannot have the effect of recalling or setting aside said appointment. The Constitution is clear. There must be a rejection by the Commission on Appointments or non-action on its part for the confirmation to be recalled. Ad interim appointment. When is there an ad interim appointment? Ad interim appointment or recess appointments. It is done when the Congress is in recess. It does not necessarily mean that the appointment is temporary, as per the word ad interim means. So when is it made? 1. Made by the President while Congress is not in session. 2. It takes effect immediately, but ceases to be valid when 1. Disapproved by the Commission on Appointment, and 2. Upon the next adjournment of Congress, under Section 16, Subsection 2, Article 7. 3. Ad interim appointments are permanent appointments. Ad interim appointments to the Constitutional Commission, example, COMELEC, are permanent, as these take effect immediately and can no longer be withdrawn by the President once the appointee has qualified into office. The fact that it is subject to confirmation of the Commission on Appointment does not alter its permanent character. From the case Matibag versus Binipayo, 2002.